So you want to build a van, you want to build an ambulance, you want to build a bus, or you want to camperize a trailer, or maybe you're renovating an RV. What are some of the big build mistakes that I see people make? Now, first of all, I've been in this industry for a long time. I've seen a lot of amazing RV builds. I've seen a lot of horrible builds, and I mean horrible. So let's go through some of the stuff that I see, some of the common mistakes in building your RV. Number one, the big one is people think that they're building a house that's going to be standing in one spot for its entire life. Unless you're building a tiny house that gets moved once, every single day you drive your vehicle, your RV, pull your trailer, do whatever, it's like a house going through an earthquake on a repeated basis, and stuff gets loose. Now, I see so many people that will get some wood, they'll drive a nail in it, and they think, wow, it's secure now. Well, the problem with a nail is that as things get twisted, as things move, they come loose. And once they come loose, you're done. So the first thing I recommend is get away from nails. Now, you can use nails to finish molding. Like if you got some molding and you want to just put it on there, you can use some nails. But I strongly recommend for anything that's structural, for anything that you want to stay in place and take weight, take movement, just get away from the nails. What should you use? Well, I recommend minimum some good screws. Screws that go in your wood far enough so that they're actually grabbing something. When people use these little tiny screws and they're barely getting into the second piece of wood, I just cringe. The other thing is, if you're going to use screws, which you should be doing, pre-drill the holes. Because I see people constantly trying to drive a screw through and you hear the wood go crack. And once it cracks, no matter how much glue you put on it, you've already stressed it. You've already caused issues. So pre-drill the holes. Then I recommend a good glue. It doesn't have to be Gorilla Glue. Gorilla Glue works. I'm not against Gorilla Glue in any way, shape, or form, but it can just be a really good white glue to hold the work together. But before you do that, and I see this so often, and hey, I'll say I'm as bad as anybody with that. Make sure you're pre-fitting everything. Put it in your vehicle. Make sure that it fits before you start gluing. Make sure you know your plans before you start gluing. Because once you put something together, once you get it in there and glued and screwed together, it's going to be pretty hard to change it. So make sure of that. Now, what do I recommend in addition to just putting regular screws in and just gluing it? Well, my favorite thing, and if you've ever used it, it's a Kreg jig, and they are amazing. What they do is they allow you to put the screw in on an angle into the wood, and it actually holds it better than just going straight through. I absolutely love it. And for the investment in one of these, in Canada, I think they're about $50. For that investment, it'll make your work so much stronger, so much nicer. It's well worth it. It really, really is. Now, what's the next mistake that I see so often? Well, the next mistake is people thinking that they need to build with massive wood. And they go out and they get 2x4s and they start building their vehicle. They go out and get 3/4 inch thick sheets of plywood, and then they use 2x4s, and then they start building their vehicles with that. You don't need heavy duty 2x4s or 2x6s or 3/4 inch. You just don't need it. If you need something stronger, if you need something bigger, go with a 2x3. It's a good wood. It's straighter than a 2x2. It's a lot stronger than a 2x2, but it's not got near the weight of a 2x4. But honestly and truthfully, 2x2s are more than you need in most situations to do any framing in a van. I've done that in my vehicle. I built just rough shelves for all of my cupboards, and then I put covers on them of an 1/8 inch Baltic birch plywood. And it's stronger than strong. I can stand on it. I can sit on it. I can do a ton of stuff. And it stays together. Then when you put it together, like I said, put it together using the Craig jig, using some glue, and then put your sheeting over top of it of some type. Now, I also see a lot of people that use plywood as supports. And hey, I'm all for it. This is a plywood wall. There's nothing on this wall. It's a sheet of plywood, and that is it. Because I don't need it to be 2 inches thick, 4 inches thick. I don't need insulation. I don't need all of that. So you can use just plywood for walls. You don't need to build heavy-duty framing for all of your stuff. It will work just with plywood. And with the Craig jig and using plywood, that can be enough to build your cabinets. Now, one small trick that I see people, not doing so often, they'll get a piece of wood, they'll go and they'll attach another piece of wood, maybe they'll use a 2x2 underneath it, and they'll attach it like this, and then they say, hey, there, I built a really nice cabinet. Well, the problem that you've got here is if you're putting any weight on this, you're pushing down on this, and it's not holding. Whenever you're building anything, try to put something on top that's going to push down naturally so you don't have to build an artificial lip for everything. Now, you can get fancy. You really can. But, if you do just this, if you put this together just like this, if you use a Craig jig to hold it together, if you put glue on the edge, you honestly don't need anything on the inside to hold it together. If you want to, yeah, you can put the 2x2s inside. Putting the 2x2 inside, hey, it'll hold it some more, but you honestly don't need to. I had a Northern Light camper years ago, and I was really impressed with what they did for the build quality. First of all, everything was very thin sheeting, but it was nice. It was well done. Everywhere that they put it together, they put little 1x1 strips and pinned and glued that. That thing, well, it was in 1992, and I sold it in, I think it was 2012, and I was the second owner on it, and every cabinet in that thing was perfectly tight, and I used that a lot. Every cabinet, not one piece of sheeting came off of it, but it wasn't built with heavy-duty wood. It didn't have all 2x4s and stuff. It was built in such a way that everything was built compactly. Everything was built so that if any pressure was put on something, it was a natural pressure. It wasn't building a different area so that it could clip onto it or so that it could hold onto it. So think when you're building so that when you're putting stuff together, the weight and everything is pushing down and you're not just causing yourself more weaknesses, because it's a big issue. And finally, my pet peeve, and I've talked about this so often, and it really is a pet peeve of mine. You're building a vehicle, you're moving. Unless it's a tiny home or a bus that you're moving to one location and leaving it there for a long time, you're moving your vehicle daily, weekly, monthly. Don't use home-weighted products. And what do I mean by that? Ceramic, marble. Don't use granite. Don't use materials that are way too heavy for a vehicle that you're driving. And again, I see this constant. Don't get me wrong. There's some beautiful builds out there. I just watched one person's build the other day. It's amazing. It's really nice. They have a live edge counter for their kitchen. It looks great. The countertop had some cracks in it, so they poured epoxy in it. It looks great. But when I think about the weight of it, it's at least 3 inches thick. And it's huge. I would say at least 6 feet long by about 3 feet wide. And when I think of adding the epoxy to it, that's a lot of weight. If you put something in your van and you notice your van all of a sudden goes down like this, and you're just hauling it home to build your van, it's probably too heavy. If you're building with all this home stuff, you're going to have problems with gas mileage, with handling, with everything else. So build with lighter stuff. I know some of the stuff for vehicles doesn't look as nice as the home stuff. A ceramic wall in the bathroom looks really cool. A plastic wall, it's just not quite as cool. A marble countertop looks really good. A plastic one, a wooden one, I used wood in mine. I didn't use any ceramic. I didn't use anything like that. If I did line my bathroom, I would line it with a sheet of plastic attached to the wall, a thin plastic just so that it's waterproof, silicone the edges. I wouldn't go with all this ceramic. With my flooring, I see it so often in flooring. People put in 2x4s. Then they build on the 2x4s and they put in the 3/4 inch sheet of plywood. Then on top of the plywood, I see them put in all this wood. It's like you don't need that much. You don't need that thickness. You don't need it that heavy. You can get away from it. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people build amazing vehicles, and I've seen many of them, and they are great. But remember, you're driving your vehicle. You want it strong enough so that it stays together, but you don't want it so heavy that it's just going to fall apart from the weight of the vehicle, that you're going to actually damage your van, your ambulance, your bus, because it's so heavy that you're just going to destroy the suspension on it. So play the game so that it's secure enough that stuff stays together, but at the same time you're not overbuilding it with too much weight. So until next time, have a great day. I'm going to go out for a bike ride now and enjoy the great outdoors. It's supposed to be 25 degrees Celsius here in southern Alberta today. Get out there, enjoy the great outdoors, and have a fun time doing it. Bye-bye now.